Hello weirdos, welcome back to my channel. My name is Becca and hi, how are ya? How you been? Long time no see. Today's video is actually really important to me. This case, the first time I learned about it, it really changed a lot for me. It changed the way that I exist in the world amongst the people around me, and maybe it will do the same for you. So if you like life-changing murders that really do change everything, not just for you, but for society, then keep watching because you're gonna totally love this video. Around 2:30 in the morning, March 13th, 1964, a woman was walking the 100 feet from her vehicle to the front door of her apartment in Queens, New York. Unfortunately, she wouldn't get the opportunity to go upstairs and celebrate her one-year anniversary with her girlfriend because she would be stabbed, raped, and robbed before she could ever even reach the door. Lucky for her, many people saw this entire attack happen. Unlucky for her, not one person would call the police for nearly 45 minutes while she died in the streets below. The resulting aftermath of her murder would change not only the way that we report crimes in the United States, but the way psychologists look at large groups of people and the psychology of reporting crimes in general. This is the case of Kitty Genovese. Catherine Suzanne Genovese, known as Kitty to her friends and family, was born in Brooklyn, July 7th, 1935, to Rachel and Vincent Genovese. She was the oldest of 5 kids. She had a pretty normal upbringing. She went to high school, she got along with her friends and family, she loved her parents, and they were a pretty close-knit family just in general. However, in 1953, Kitty's mom witnessed a murder in the streets, and she decided that it was completely unsafe for her and her family to stay in Brooklyn, and she picked everything up and moved to Connecticut. Kitty, however, was holding down 2 really well-paying jobs in Queens, and she wanted to stay. She loved New York. She loved the people. She loved the environment, the culture, and like I said, she was making really good money, so she stayed behind. During the day, she worked at an insurance company, and at night, she worked as a bartender at a nightclub in Queens. Over the next decade, she would go from bartender to manager of this bar, which prompted her to move to Queens. Around this same time, Kitty would meet a woman by the name of Mary Ann, and they would fall in love. Soon after they started dating, they got a second-floor apartment in Queens in a neighborhood that was considered to be quiet and safe, and they were happy for a while. One day at around 2:30 in the morning, Kitty was returning from her job at the bar. The drive took roughly 45 minutes, and she was super excited to get home because she was getting ready to celebrate her first anniversary with Mary Ann. At one point during her drive, Kitty stopped at a red light. This would be the first time that a man by the name of Winston Mosley would see Kitty. See, Winston was not on his way home. Although he was getting ready to go home, Winston was out and about at 2:30 in the morning for some darker reasons. He was out looking for someone to kill. He had almost given up hope when he saw Kitty stop at that red light and followed her the 45 minutes back to her apartment. At 3:15, Kitty would pull into the Kew Gardens Long Island Railroad parking lot and park her car. She would then walk the 100 feet to her apartment door like she had every other night previously. The only thing that was different about this night is that she was not the only car parking in that parking lot. Mosley parked, and after she started walking to her apartment door, he got out and followed her. She must have been distracted because of the anniversary, and she didn't notice Mosley approaching her from behind. And because of this, he was able to stab her twice in the back. Upon being stabbed, she screamed out, "Oh no, I've been stabbed!" and she fell to the ground. This scream prompted a neighbor to look out his window and scream, "Hey, you leave that girl alone." See, this neighbor had watched Mosley stab Kitty and was trying to stop it. This scared Mosley, and he took off running back to his car, and Kitty ran to her front door. Mosley sat in his car for a while trying to calm down, and it wasn't until he realized that the cops weren't coming that he got back out of his car and went and looked for Kitty. Now, Kitty had taken off towards her apartment complex door. However, that door was locked, and she collapsed in the doorway. Sadly, Mosley found her there, where he would stab her 11 more times, rape her, and then rob her of $43 before taking off. A friend of Kitty's who lived downstairs heard her crying at the door and went out to comfort her. And finally, at around 4 in the morning, someone called the police, and it took them about 15 minutes to get there. However, it was entirely too late, and Kitty died. Mary Ann would go with Kitty to the hospital, and she would, of course, identify Kitty's body. Now, originally, Mary Ann was a suspect. She was interrogated and questioned by police, and of course, she was ruled out as a suspect. However, she wasn't ruled out until after the investigators harassed her about Kitty and hers relationship, and the questioning turned unbelievably inappropriate when they started asking very invasive questions about their sex life. 6 days after the attack, Mosley confessed to Kitty's murder and 2 other murders. He also confessed to a bunch of other rapes and murders. Now, before this, Mosley had no criminal record at all. He was a husband and a father of 3 children. And when he was asked initially why he attacked Kitty, it was because she was in the wrong place at the wrong time. He had been out that night looking for someone to kill, and she just happened to roll up. Now, his son would say that Kitty screamed racial slurs at him from the stoplight, and later, Mosley would try to say that it was a mob hit and he was just the getaway driver and that he didn't stab anyone, but it didn't work. He was sentenced to death, which was later brought down to 20 years to life. And in 1968, Mosley would escape from prison, which would tack on another 30 years to his sentence. And in 2016, Mosley died, having been the longest serving inmate in New York history. The following day, the newspaper ran a small 4-paragraph article. Nobody really cared about the murder. It was New York. It was Queens. There was murders there all the time. However, 2 weeks later, a journalist by the name of Martin Gainsbourg ran another article. This article would set a lot into motion. The title of this article, 37 Who Saw Murder Didn't Call Police. It would go on to say that over 38 people witnessed Kitty's murder. They watched her get stabbed, they watched her get raped, and not one person would call police for over 30 minutes. One person was quoted as saying that he just didn't want to get involved. Later, a lot of the facts from this article turned out to be gross exaggerations or completely untrue. Some people may have tried to call police, and it was either not an important call, it was put at the bottom of the wait list, or they just couldn't get through to police. But it seems like a couple of people tried to call unsuccessfully. Now, this case doesn't just end with a shocking article and a terrible murder. It actually changed a lot about society. The biggest change was 911. Before this murder, people dialed 0 to get to police. They had to talk to the operator would transfer them to the precinct would transfer them to the dispatch, and the dispatch would transfer them to police. It took a long time, it was completely unreliable, and it just wasn't the best system. But in 1968 is when they adapted the 911 system, and it was credited to this case. The other thing that it changed was the bystander effect. See, psychologists hadn't really studied large groups of people and the nature of reporting crimes at this point. It wasn't until this case that they really started to dive into that, and they discovered something extremely unusual. Now, if an individual, one person, were to have seen that crime and they knew that they were the only person to witness it, they were more likely to call police than if they were in a large group. If people in a huge group saw the murder happen and they knew that other people saw the murder happen too, they were almost entirely unlikely to call police. Why? Because they assumed that everybody else was going to call, that somebody already had. They also didn't want to be embarrassed. They didn't want to be a social reject. What if it wasn't that big a deal and they called the police and the police said, it's not even that big of a deal, it's not even that big of a crime. They didn't want to be embarrassed. Now, why is this such a big deal? Well, studies show that embarrassment and rejection are processed in the same area of the brain that pain is processed in. So when you are embarrassed or when you are socially rejected from your peers, you may actually experience physical pain from those emotions. So much so that some researchers say that if you get embarrassed or you feel socially rejected and you take a Tylenol, you will actually feel better once that medication kicks in. Now, this case was super important to me. I learned about this in Psychology 101 in college. And the reason that this is important is because I learned a very valuable lesson because of this case. And I hope that you learn this lesson too. If not you, then nobody. If you don't do something, nobody else will. If you see a crime, a car accident, or someone in need of help and you don't call police, just assume that nobody will call the police. It is human nature to assume that someone has already called, that someone has already offered help, or that help is on the way, and to do nothing. It's easier to do nothing. It's easier to turn your head and just say, I don't want to get involved. It's not my problem. But we're humans. It is our problem. If you see something, say something. And if you get embarrassed, take a Tylenol. All right, guys, that was the life-changing case of Kitty Genovese, at least life-changing for me. Since then, if I see a car accident or something in the road on the freeway, or if I see something that's a little suspicious, I just call the police. I don't assume that someone already has or, anything like that. And there's been quite a few times where I was the first person to call. Once it happened with a car accident, and it also happened once with a house fire. I called and they said, oh, well, we haven't gotten any reports of this. We'll send someone out. So sometimes you are the only person who can make a difference in that situation. And I hope that when the occasion arises, so do you. Let me know in the comments what you think. Let me know what your opinions are on the bystander effect. There are some psychologists that don't agree with the bystander effect. They say it's not real, and other ones swear by it. I definitely think that it is a true thing. I think that large groups of people will pass the buck if they are able because they just don't want to be embarrassed. Also in the comments, let me know what case you would like me to cover next, or just let me know that you stopped by. I love it when you guys say hi to me. I have linked in the description box below my Linktree link. In that link, you will find my merch, you will find my Twitter, you will find my TikTok, you'll find all of my social medias in there for you to enjoy and communicate with me. I also have a link in there for you to suggest cases, to let me know what you think might be an interesting video and to provide any supporting information you might have. So give that a check, do all the normal YouTube stuff, like, subscribe, share, comment, do all those things. I love it so much, and I also love you so much because you're just so friggin' great, saint or not. All right, guys, I will see you in the next video. Don't forget that if not you, then no one. Have a good day.